Hi all, my name is Emma and welcome to One Stitch Pony. Today I'm going to be talking about knitting and sewing projects that I've been up to recently. So I'll kind of follow standard format that I've seen other people on YouTube do, where first we talk about finished objects, I'll talk about works in progress, and then I'll talk about acquisitions / future plans. Before I get started, I wanted to just introduce myself a little bit since this is my first video here on YouTube. My name is Emma. I live in northern Arizona in the United States. I live with my husband and I have a dog who's a year old. We like to spend a lot of time outside, camping, hiking, doing things like that. Professionally, I am a pediatric speech-language pathologist, so I treat feeding and speech disorders in children. I love doing that. It's definitely my passion, but any time that I have in the off time is devoted to knitting and sewing. Since I spend so much time knitting and sewing, I figured why not film it a little bit for my progress, just to see myself get better and improve, and also to hopefully be a part of a community that I've really enjoyed watching online. So a little bit about my crafting history. I love crafting. I'm not new to knitting. I started knitting when I was in middle school. My grandmother taught me kind of the basic knit and purl stitches, and then I learned the rest on YouTube and online by Googling things. I am fairly new to garment knitting. I took a break from knitting over the past few years while I was in college and graduate school. I didn't have enough time to really do as much as I wanted. But since coming back to it, I've been really excited by all of the different creators that are talking about knitting online, the different pattern makers. I can't believe the access to patterns that we have now, even compared to 5 years ago. It's amazing. I can't believe how much it's changed since the last time I was really into knitting heavily. So I've come back to it full force and I'm very excited. Sewing, I'm definitely a beginner with sewing. During the pandemic, I got a sewing machine and I made a lot of face masks. So I know how to do that. But in regards to garment sewing, I'm definitely a beginner. But I'm really looking forward to learning more about sewing because I appreciate just making clothes in all different ways. So I will get into the beginning of my video by starting with finished objects. But in the comments, please let me know where you are with your knitting and sewing. Are you beginner, advanced? What are you looking forward to learning about? I know that as makers, we're always learning. So every single project, I'm learning something new. So I'll start with finished objects. This is one that I'm very excited about. This is the teddy bear sweater by Petite Knit. This is technically my first garment, I guess, / sweater I've ever made. And I definitely recommend starting with baby objects as your first because they knit up so quickly. And it's a great way to practice new skills, but get a little bit of kind of immediate gratification from it. So this is for a family friend who just gave birth about 5 days ago, but it's August here in Arizona, so nobody is wearing sweaters right now. So I went ahead and knit a 6 to 9 month size so that he can actually wear it once it's cold out. I used suggested gauge, suggested needle size for this item. I can't remember what the suggested yarn was for this pattern, but I used Cascade Yarns 220 Superwash Merino in the color 39. I used probably a ball and a half of this. I was disappointed, unfortunately, because as you can see, there are some color differences in the yarn. I just have a stitch every once in a while that, like up here too, that are not quite fully dyed through. So that was a bummer. I was really not happy about that, and there wasn't really much I could do about it. I have a lot of other baby knitting that I'll be doing coming up soon. I have some pregnant friends, so please comment your favorite yarns to use for baby projects in the meantime, because I did enjoy using this yarn, but I was very unhappy with some of the color variation, and I found it in both balls or skeins of this yarn that I purchased. But for the pattern itself, it's a seamless top down with raglan increases and short row shaping on the neck. So it was the perfect first garment for me to be able to practice some of those, and I think it just turned out so good. I really like it. So I'm going to be seeing the family. Oh, and then for the little face, I embroidered it. The sample has buttons for the eyes, but it does give instructions for how to embroider the eyes. And it has instructions for embroidering the nose and mouth. So I did that with just some scrap black yarn that I had lying around. The next finished item that I have is called Dotted Bag number 2. The maker of this pattern is Cleo Malone, and this pattern is on the Castaway Yarn Shop website. That's where I got it, at least. I didn't look to see if it's on Ravelry, but it's a free pattern through the Castaway Yarn Shop. It's a yarn store in Santa Rosa, California. I have family who live there, and so every time I go visit, I'm going to that yarn store. It's absolutely adorable. The pattern is free, so it's pretty bare bones. There's not a lot of hand holding on this pattern, but it's fairly simple. I used Wool and the Gang, the cotton. The main color is eucalyptus green, and then the little contrast dots are ivory white. And it's so cute. It turned out really well. The dots, as you can see, some of them are very prominent and some of them are not so prominent. When I first did it, I thought that it was a tension issue. And then I was doing some research on color work knitting, and I've realized that it was because I was probably holding the yarn incorrectly for color dominance. And so on this row, it looks like I did it correctly. This row looks like it was correct, but on these 3 rows, looks like I was not holding the yarn either on top or bottom. I can't remember where the dominance goes, but I suspect that that was my problem there. The pattern has instructions for knitting handles like these, or for knitting shoulder straps. So I went with the handles. I really liked them. And then the pattern also said, using a circular magic cast on however many stitches. So it was not super clear on the cast on method. I just went online and I did a Judy's magic cast on that has a closure at the bottom. And it's not the easiest thing to do, but once you get the hang of it, it's really fun. So I definitely want to knit something like this again. Maybe like a basket or something shorter, but I love these handles. So this was really fun to make. That was it for finished objects so far. Now I have works in progress. Currently, I've got a blouse and a camisole, both by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So this is blouse number 2 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. It will have sleeves. I finished the front, back, and body portion. I just took it off the needles last night to block it because I'm using a cotton linen yarn and it was awfully scrunched before I blocked it. It was much shorter. I meant to measure it to see how much it would grow. But I took it off the needles, put it on a pearl string, and as soon as I got it out of the water, it was already so much longer. It's the perfect length. It's probably going, at this point, it's going to hit me right under my belly button, which is where I wanted it. The description for this pattern is a long sleeve blouse with boat neck and drop shoulder, and it's meant to be oversized. I am not using the suggested yarn, and I did do a gauge swatch for it, but I have no idea where it was at. I kind of just really wanted to get this started. So I'm using Juniper Moon Farm Zoe. It's a soft cotton linen blend, 60% cotton, 40% linen. It's a fine yarn, and the color is toasted coconut. I'm holding it single stranded. So really what I wanted to make was a very loosely crocheted kind of summer sweater, but I bought this yarn and I had just gotten done with a different crochet project, and I just really did not feel like crocheting anymore. This yarn is very splitty. The strands of cotton and linen are woven pretty loosely, so I just couldn't imagine using a crochet hook with this. I thought it would just split the whole time I was using it, and it splits the whole time I'm knitting with it. So I think I made the right choice by using it for a knitting project. It has some short row shaping at the back neck, so it's a little bit different in the back than the front. I have had to reknit the body of this 3 times. The lace pattern itself isn't difficult, but any little mess up, any little dropped stitch, any little inconsistency is very evident on this pattern. So it's something that I've really had to concentrate on. It's not something that I can really watch TV while I'm doing it, while I'm knitting it. So the next step will be to bind off the bottom hem and then start on the sleeves. And hopefully I'll be done with this and have it to wear for kind of the summer to fall transition. I'm knitting the smallest size, and I think I'm using the suggested needle size, and I think since my gauge is a little bit off, knitting the smallest size is what is best for me. If I were using the suggested yarn, I think I would probably want to knit the second smallest size, so small. This is extra small, but it's giving me a little bit more oversized. Okay, next whip is camisole number 10, also by My Favorite Things Knitwear, also a boat neck tank camisole. This is it's described as a boat neck loose fit tank with rounded edges. I'm knitting a size small, so that's the second to the smallest size on My Favorite Things Knitwear. You start with the neck, do the little shoulders, separate front and back, and then join in the round and knit in stockinette. There's this rounded edge, as I said earlier, that is knit into the pattern. I'm using Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color, is it Dusty Artichoke? It's that very popular color that lots of people use. Held double, yes, Dusty Artichoke, and I'm loving it. I did a gauge swatch on this one, and when it is blocked, all the stitches really get nice and even. I did hang block this and put some little chip clips on it to weigh it down to see, since it is silk, to see if it stretched at all, and it stretched the tiniest bit. I like my things kind of oversized, and I probably will knit the length a little more on the cropped side anyway. So I'll probably hang block this when I'm done with it too, and we'll see how it fits. I don't know if I've even tried it on yet. I should probably try it on to see how the armpits and everything are fitting, but I'm knitting a size small. Did I say that? I'm using the suggested yarn. I got suggested gauge, and I'm using the suggested needle size. I'm usually pretty lucky on needle size and gauge. I think I'm a pretty consistent knitter. All those years of knitting blankets has made me a pretty even knitter. I'm not really tight or loose. And it's stockinette knit in the round, so that helps with consistency as well. Okay, I'm going to move on to plans now. So the thing that I'm the most excited about is the mosaic sweater. This is on the Knitting for Olive website. I saw a sample of this sweater at Castaway in the store. They knit the sweater. The in-store sample was white and this beautiful rust orange color. The sample of the pattern on the website was black and white. So I loved the contrast of the black and white. That's what I decided on. It's a Knitting for Olive pattern, so of course the suggested yarn is Knitting for Olive. It is suggested to have Knitting for Olive merino held double with 1 strand of mohair, and it's color work, and it's all over color work. So at any given time when I'm knitting the sweater, I will be working with a total of 6 strands of yarn. That's a little bit nerve-wracking. I've also been doing research on color work, and like I was talking about earlier with the dotted bag, making sure you have correct color dominance so that your contrast color is shining through the way that it should be. Another thing that I've seen other creators talk about is bleeding, their dark color of yarn bleeding into their lighter color of yarn. So I'm definitely going to do a gauge swatch with the color work pattern, and I'll probably block it in a little bit warmer water than what I would really want to block it in, just to see, really test it to see if I'm going to have any bleeding. So I have all of that prep work to do before I can even think of starting the sweater. The sweater is a bottom up construction, so all of my other patterns have been top down. That will be new. It has instructions both for knitting the body and then separating for the sleeves, or it has instructions for steeking. I will not be steeking, but it's good to know that it has the instructions for both. So for colors, I got both the mohair and the merino in licorice sweater quantities. And then I got, for my main color, I got cloud, the color cloud in the merino, and then the color cream in the mohair. That's just what they had available. So this will also be my first time using mohair. There's a lot of firsts with that sweater. It does feel a little risky to do so many firsts on this very complex color work sweater, but I don't know. I would rather do something that I really like and I'm really inspired by and have some learning curves, and maybe it's not 100% perfect. I would rather do that than make a bunch of easier beginner projects, and I don't know, it just feels like a waste of time and money. If I really like something, I'll figure out how to make it. If it means I have to rip it apart and redo it a bunch of times, I don't care. Okay, my next plan and my last knitting project I'll talk about today is just a pair of socks. I've never knit a pair of socks before. I have made Christmas stockings before, but those aren't really socks. They're kind of two-dimensional compared to actual socks. So I got some sock yarn. This is just basic sock yarn. It's 75% superwash and 25% polyamide. I got it at my local yarn store. It's a hand-dyed, hand-painted, it says superwash yarn. I did my gauge swatch in the round, and I did it on a US size 1 needle. My plan is to do a very basic, just stockinette stitch with a heel flap and gusset, heel, top down. So that'll be my plan. I'm not super excited to start it. Some people love knitting socks, and so I just want to see what the hype is about, but I'm not very excited about it. So we'll see when I get to it. And then that's all of my knitting today. Last but not least, my main sewing project I'm starting is called the Grace Dolman Quilted Jacket. It's a pattern that I found on Etsy, And I've been wanting for months and months to make a jacket out of a quilt. I've seen people on YouTube do it. I've seen people use I've seen people use sewing patterns, and I've also seen people just cut out rectangles and sew them all together and make a boxy, oversized jacket. But I decided to get an actual pattern. So I'll be making a whole video devoted just to this jacket. But I'm really loving the pattern so far. I just had it printed for me at FedEx instead of printing it out at home and taping it all together. I think it was worth the money. I don't know, we'll see. But I have this quilt that was given to me by a family member. It was just a Goodwill find, and it's not necessarily an heirloom. It's got some stains, it's got some rips, and I'll have to do a little bit of repairing before I can actually make the jacket, but I'm very excited about it. So watch out for that video. We'll see if I can do it or if it will be a complete flop, but it's something I really wanted to do for a long time. I'm very excited. So thank you so much for watching my first video. Let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments for how I can make it better, or if there's anything else that I should talk about. Don't forget to leave me suggestions for baby yarns. I'm dying to know what other people like to use for baby yarns. My main gripe with a lot of baby yarns is that when you go to a store and look at yarns that are made for baby clothes, a lot of times they're in colors that are just very pastel or either blue or pink. There's not a lot of options for really pretty browns and things like that, which I prefer to make. So I'm really looking for baby yarns or yarns that are suitable for babies that have a wider range of colors. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.